Hi, welcome to the second in a series of Meet the Candidates. It's my pleasure again to be here with Malt, Maria, and Dennis. This is very important, as you can note from the viewers looking at both ours and our opponents that, and in the same light of looking at the national debates and interviews, there's a serious and pivotal election that's going on in the United States and also in the village of Mamaroneck. What we don't need is the dog and pony show that we saw from our opponents that I'll talk about you, you talk about him, I'll talk about you. What we really want to talk about is the issues and what the village of Mamaroneck residents and voters want to know about. And we'll start off right with the nitty gritty and let's talk about not so much of what people do is how they do it. I think the best way to just start the discussion and illustrate that point is the drastic change that Trustee Potok and his cronies have now introduced into trying to get on the ballot for a mandatory referendum, which is to strip the mayor's office. They do not want to have a mayor in the village of Mamaroneck. They want to have trustees. And it flies in the face of New York state law, which very clearly says that the mayor has certain powers and powers of appointment. But even then, it's not the argument itself. And I think this is what the people want to know and what your viewpoint is, because actually you will be the majority on the board of trustees versus myself, who is the mayor. And again, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. The fact of the matter is, it would be interesting to let the people know what your viewpoint is, not on the merits of the question, should the mayor have appointments, but how did they do it? They did it surreptitiously, without as far as I'm concerned, a legally called meeting. They called a special meeting. In the beginning of every year, you have the reorganization meeting when you establish your normal meetings. They did this at the tail end of a work session. Then they called for a public hearing, which I'm claiming never happened. And again, it's just, and they noticed the public on a holiday, and they did it on the 5th for a meeting on the 6th. I mean, is that a way to really... and you all three, I know, are involved on committees and everything else. Is that how you get people involved in a residence?
Absolutely not. That is just, it's horrible. It's saying to anybody who wants to volunteer in this village, well, it's good that you want to volunteer, but we're not going to take you seriously because you're not the ones we handpicked and we don't like your way of doing things, so we're just going to go with our own people. It sends a really bad message and it discourages people from volunteering. The volunteers in this village are the backbone of our village. We encourage everybody to come out and volunteer. I was approached by a young man in his teens, and he said, how do you feel about younger people getting involved in volunteering on boards and committees? And I said, the more the merrier. You guys are the future of our village, and we need you to come out here with your fresh new ideas, volunteer, and do things. When things like this happen, when these special meetings are called, when things like this happen, it's ridiculous. It becomes personal, and it's outrageous, and it's not in the best interest of the village.
Secrecy is the antithesis of, an open society. So in a democracy, again, everyone should be heard, and then, a vote should be taken. So, and again, although I think, you said we're not supposed to talk about, or we don't want to talk about the effect here. I think it's still very important. Again, look at the president power to pretty much appoint to federal, bench, judges. It's the same checks and balances. The Senate votes on that. And I don't care who is the mayor ultimately. Parties might change. The majorities. We want to have checks and balances. We don't want to have just a board of trustees whoever is in charge of that board can do whatever they want to do. It's never good. Having a system set up where you don't have checks and balances. So I'm very much in favor of maintaining that order that we have right now.
Yeah, I think what they do is like politicians do the Friday document dump, when they kind of just throw things out there at the last minute on a Friday and figuring that no one's going to see them. The meeting of August 15th, they dumped 6 items on the agenda at 11:45 in the evening, right, when most people are long asleep. Right. Yes, and that kind of thing just shouldn't fly in this village. Everyone should be on notice at the proper timing and get these things out to for the people to understand what's happening, so they have a chance to digest it before they just push it through.
It's interesting. That is even not the segment we were going to go to, but you just brought an excellent point on the 6, like the rezoning you want to do and the FAR and so on. This is something that, as you noted, they dumped at night at the last minute, and if there's anything that affects the village of Mamaroneck is, you're talking zoning, you're talking about 40% of the people in the village of Mamaroneck, 1,800 sites. And you're going to make their homes, including mine, and anyone else who has an R5, is non-conforming. I mean, and even if it had some merit, again, it's not what you do, it's how they do it. And they do it because they have no regard for the public. They think that they don't need the public. They have blinders on. Their way is the highway, and if you don't like it, you're on the highway, and that's it. And as sort of a segue to that, even though that'll be open, the subject of volunteers that you brought up, Maria, I find it amusing that several years ago I started the Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee on Parking, among several other Mayor's Ad Hoc committees, because quite frankly, it's not because I'm a genius, it's because I listen to the people. And the people were saying, you know, we have a problem with the parking. So we had it, and a committee was made up of residents, business, members of the different land use boards and so on. And then all of a sudden, POTOC realized that, oh, you know, this is a good deal. Maybe forget the mayors, and we're going to have our own parking committee, which I thought was great. Do it, bring it in. It should be even more impact. But what did they do? They have a hand-picked committee. And I said, well, how about the people that have already been invested in doing it? The businessmen, Chamber of Commerce, and so on. No, we don't want any of them. So, you know, what do they think of the volunteers? I mean, you know, you can speak to that online. The irony is,
how much time
you
do we
were there.
have?
Because parking is a key issue that everyone's talking about now.
Parking
If I
is a
get
big
any communication, I get 50 communications a day. It's amazing.
It's the condition of Mamaroneck Avenue right now is horrendous. It's horrible. I was blessed to be on this committee. I'm working with a great bunch of people. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was, I believe, over 30 people that volunteered to be on this committee when it was posted. And out of those people, only 11 of them were chosen, which to me wasn't right. I think that everybody who applied should have been on it. Everybody has an idea. Everybody's opinion is valuable. But we have been working, as I said, diligently, and we're facing a brick wall. This all started at a meeting when after the Walker study came out and the village went ahead and purchased the multi-space meters, and they wanted to do license plate readers to go along with them, which would limit 2-hour parking, period, on Mamaroneck Avenue in 24 hours. People were up in arms about it. The parking committee was formed. We quickly dealt with the license plate readers. We got rid of those. It took about 45 seconds for me to do a Google search, which of course was laughed at when I went to the board meeting, because Alyssa Miller had said, all I'm hearing at this meeting is complaints. How about somebody come up with an answer? Somebody come up with a solution to the problem. I went home, I Googled smart parking meter solutions. These smart single space meters came up. They take credit cards, nickels, dimes, quarters, everything a multi-space meter does with the convenience of a single space meter. I emailed it to you. I went to the next board meeting, and I got, oh, you did a Google search. Those were the trustees' exact words. Yes, and it didn't cost me $50,000 to a consulting firm to do, and I got an answer. And it's ridiculous that we're over a year later and we're still hashing this out. We did all kinds of testings. We got the results back. People still do not like the multi-space meters. They don't like them in any way, shape, or form. We've actually narrowed it down. The parking committee has narrowed it down to one vendor that performed best in our study, and we're going to go with that. It was actually in the Mamaroneck Review, to which Mr. POTOC wrote a letter to the editor contradicting, you know, getting all up in arms because the parking committee is going to recommend single-space meters. Now he's trying to scare people into thinking this is going to cost the village $2 million.
Purpose, to listen to the people?
Yeah, you would think, but yeah, so it's not going to cost $2 million for single-space meters. They're about $450 a unit. So unless we're outfitting the village of Mamaroneck plus Larchmont, Rye, Harrison, New Rochelle, and anybody else, it's not going to be $2 million.
I think the problem with this whole parking situation is that I think, based on some research that was done, I think Mr. POTOC unfortunately had this mindset already years ago on these multi-parking meters. So whatever happened, pretty much in the interim, I think his mind was set. I think maybe the biggest reason why he completely ignored most of the recommendations of the parking commission that he had put himself in place, and obviously unwilling to listen to the people. Obviously I was on Mamaroneck Avenue recently, in the evening for the first time in a while, I have to admit, and I was surprised at how many empty spaces were there between somewhere around 7:30. So never happened in the past, and obviously people are complaining. I think businesses are complaining, and I can only urge everyone, if you want that change, I think we are the candidates that obviously have that as the first item on our agenda. I mean, we're going to dial these hours back to 6 p.m. from 8 p.m. and these multi-space meters on Mamaroneck Avenue are going to go, and we're going to change that.
Exactly.
Yeah, and actually just last night I was speaking with a business owner, a restaurant owner, and he was saying that his clientele is just up in arms and they just don't know what to do about this situation. They have to run out to check the meters or put more money in the meters, and it disturbs their meals, and if they have a group of people, especially friends from out of town or something, it's just disruptive in every way, shape, and form.
Yeah, and one parking ticket, I mean, obviously, leads people to leaving the city potentially. I mean, going somewhere else. It's not good. I mean, the last thing we need in Mamaroneck is having empty stores on Mamaroneck Avenue again. And I mean, right now we pretty much have a vibrant Main Street.
For now.
For now.
I mean,
now,
because
it's already going down.
that's it.
Right,
The one
yeah,
way to
yeah.
guarantee getting a parking space on Mamaroneck Avenue is to make it so difficult for the businesses
And
to
you have
stay
to
in
very-
business, then you have plenty of
And
parking.
the ultimate hypocrisy was at one of the very recent meetings. Potok says, well, you know, and obviously because under pressure, it seems that the multi-space meters aren't working properly. They're not user-friendly. So you would think he'd say, well, let's look at something else. His answer was, believe it or not, I think we should go out and look to buy more expensive multi-space meters and put them in. I mean, you just can't make this stuff up. Again, it's not what you do, how you do it. It's egocentric, and his way is the only way. You take the highway, and it's terrible that you do that and you're not listening to the people. And the ultimate silliness of the whole thing is if you go back 3-4 years when he's in and he's talking about it, and you can see it online, you can see it on my Facebook posts and other people, oh, these parking meters are going to pay for themselves. There's no problem. They're perfect. Now he wants to blame it on the Walker study, who he pushed it through, which is ironic because in the very beginning, you'll know my stand has been no secret. That Walker study was totally inefficient. I think it was nothing more than a cut and paste. They didn't go into one store or one business and ask them about the village of Mamaroneck. And yet he was trying to push the license plate readers and invasion of privacy and so on. Again, you just don't listen to the committee. I mean, he said at the last public meeting, which I saw you were sitting there at the work session, he said, oh, well, let's talk about this. No, we don't have to talk about it at the public meeting. We didn't hear from the parking committee. What are you talking about? We got emails from the parking committee.
God. That's incredible.
Well, I think I have a little tidbit here. I mean, pretty much from Mr. Potok, who says pretty much on November 24th, 2014, at a Board of Trustee meeting, so I'm pretty sure it's online, I'm interested in making this village a destination for people who want to live here, not a destination for visitors. I'm always a big fan of saying Mamaroneck first, but you know what? Again, we're living in a village where we need businesses, we need the revenue. Obviously, it's a tax base, so disregarding one part of the equation is not really smart.
No, but this takes me back. This whole thing with the parking takes me back to the '80s when Paul Noto was the mayor, and we talked about tier parking, putting a tier. There were 2 or 3 different spots they wanted to put a tier, and they wound up, of course, building one right across the street from Village Hall and the police station. And the opposition at the time called that Noto's folly, and they took a photograph of at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning when there were 3 cars there, and they said this is what's happening. And that lot has turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to this village with the parking. People use it all the time. You can access Prospect Avenue, go down that way. You can go down Palmer Avenue way. You can go down every which way, and it's just a phenomenal place to park. It really is.
Well, it also leads to another point, part and parcel, which I think is absolutely terrible, and it illustrates why you 3 belong there as independent thinkers, because I know we've discussed this before, and that is the recent implementation, as you noted, we should reverse immediately, of, again, not what you did, it's how you did it. You increased from 6 to 8, and then you increased it a quarter. But meanwhile, you didn't tell anybody. How many people out of residents, aside from people coming in and getting tickets left and right? They're writing 30, 40, 50 tickets a night. And plus the fact that hypocrisy is now we have to pay almost between $35 and $50 an hour with benefits for the PU officers to go out. Of course they're in favor of it because they're going to make all kinds of money. It's going to cost the taxpayers more money. That's not how you do it. The parking committee, originally Mayor's Ad Hoc Committee, covered, and it wasn't my idea, there were several ideas that were brilliant. It's an entire program you're looking for. Even if you thought that increasing the time or increasing the cost, you don't do that separately by itself. It has to be, as you noted, maybe tier parking. I can tell you that the only place for a non-resident now to park in the Village of Mamaroneck for a railroad space is in that Hunter lot, because there's such a long waiting list and a desire for people to come to the Village of Mamaroneck that only residents can now park by the railroad station. And that again leads to this other debacle that's happening, but at least we got residential parking on Melbourne and Union, and more specifically in Washingtonville. That's because, as a board, our mandate is to take care of our residents and let the residents park there. But yet it's going back and forth and fighting. Again, you need an entire program on down there. I mean, it's
We
nuts
do-
what they don't care about the Village of Mamaroneck, and they're scaring people away. I get people all the time. I'm not coming to the village anymore.
I've heard it myself. But the thing is, we're spending a lot of time on parking, which is, I think, the main topic as far as the residents are concerned right now, and also the merchants. But flooding is a hot item for me, because it affects our neighbors, it affects our friends, it affects lifelong residents, and they just kind of seem to blow it off. The ACE, the Army Corps of Engineers study, they didn't want to pass. It's just completely ridiculous, and they also did not want to buy the Menzimucker, which is to
Right.
stabilize the embankments and clean the silt
Or
out
any
the,
kind of
rivers.
dredging equipment.
And
That's
that's crazy.
ridiculous.
We used one of those in Scarsdale, and it worked fantastic.
Well, it only
really
happens,
did.
as I think one of the trustees said, only every 5 or 10 years, so it's not a big deal.
That was
Not a
Potoc.
big deal.
It's a
yeah.
huge
But
deal.
flooding's not
It's
a
a
big deal.
huge
It only
deal.
happens every 10 years. It's no big deal.
Uh,
Tell the people that
Tell
live
the
in
people.
Washingtonville. You grew
So
up in
I grew up in
Washingtonville.
Washingtonville, and I would have never thought when we moved out of Washington, when we moved from Grand Street, if somebody would have told me that the houses that were behind me on Washington Street would have flooded to the tune of 6 to 8 feet of water in their basements, I would have never believed it, because it hadn't happened when I was there. Mamaroneck Avenue, of course, was underwater. Peter and Sons, the bakeries, all that, St. Vito's, always underwater. But I would have never thought that you would have had 6 to 8 feet of water on a home in the middle of Washington Street.
It goes,
And it happened.
It goes back to
And
Revere Road.
to dismiss that is ridiculous.
Revere Road, in Larchmont, that floods. My father-in-law used to live there, and he was hammered, Sandy. And it goes to First Street. I mean, it's all over the village. It's all over the village. And when the water can't flow properly into the channel to go out into the harbor, we have problems. I mean, even in Harbor Heights, some of the areas get flooded
Yeah,
up there.
down
believe it
by
or
Warren
not, the
Park.
Heights does
It's-
get flooded.
It also expands that point in that what do you do as chairman and participants and volunteers on a board? I find it incredible that as a member of the Board of Trustees, Potoc, who led the vote against it, when it's a key part of the flood mitigation, which I can tell you the village is extremely lucky. We're getting a second bite at the apple. Most people don't get a first bite. The Army Corps of Engineers and previous board picked out a program. It's done. There was a requirement that the New York State Department of State has to say it's, quote, consistent. It came to a vote, and I said, I want to be consistent. We have to show that we're in favor of this program. Potoc led the argument saying, oh, no, it's not inconsistent because we have too many questions. And he's talking about little fish in the river and, this crazy stuff, not to do it. And you're supposed to be a champion of the village, not vote against it. I said, I vote to say that it's consistent. They voted it down. No. I'll tell you what, let's say it's not inconsistent. Oh, no, we can't do that. So they voted, they sent this letter up to the Department of State saying, well, we sort of support it, but there's a lot of questions we have to do. This is after that Potoc and myself and Rich Schlingelin and a group of people went down and spoke with the Army Corps of Engineers in Washington and told them, yes, we're in favor of it. It's great. They told us why it's consistent. The Army Corps of Engineers submitted as consistent. Meanwhile, because they did that, I wrote a letter as the mayor, office of mayor, and I outlined why it was consistent. 2 weeks later, we got a decision. Yes, it's consistent. So now they're going to look at it. But the key thing that you, as members of the board, and you can tell the people right now, the estimated cost is between 6 to 8, maybe say even $10 million. Would you vote for flood mitigation in the village of Mamaroneck, and why it's so important?
As I indicated earlier, I think it's tremendously important for our neighbors, for our friends, for our residents. When you see the destruction that's done in those areas, in the flats, people call it Washingtonville. I call it the flats. My
flats.
mother was born there. And even, Howard Avenue, Lester Avenue, and First Street. It's devastating. It is just devastating. And then the houses can't be sold. They need to be redone. The mold gets into everything and just creeps up the walls. Some houses have to be completely
Got it.
demolished. Yeah.
I'm sure you've gotten some real horror stories. People come with you before the BAR and zoning board and stuff like that.
Obviously, I mean, with flooding, I mean, we see all these applications where obviously now the houses have to be put higher, more or
Yeah,
less,
2
so
feet
above the
above base
floodplain.
flood elevation, right?
Yeah, so obviously that's sometimes becomes, I mean, I guess an aesthetics issue, but again, it is what it is. I mean, ultimately you got to deal with it. So flooding is a big issue, and I mean, I certainly gonna vote in favor of whatever pretty much is necessary.
Great.
Exactly.
It also leads to something that we've already passed, which is the TOD. The TOD
Yeah.
is another key
Right.
to, as far as I'm concerned, the future of the village of Mamaroneck, keeping the diversity. There are a couple of programs now involved. The A&P, for the public that's wondering about it. CVS is moving into half, and Brixmore, who's a very good neighbor, by the way, is the property owner. They are negotiating with a smaller grocery store. There will be a grocery store in
Great.
there.
You need one there.
Absolutely.
It's a necessity.
And they are very aware of that. They could. I speak to them all the time. They very easily, CVS wanted to rent the whole store. They said no, because even though their plan was to buy maybe Germani's property and expand it more, it's not. So as good neighbors, they are keeping the building. Half will be CVS and half will be a grocery store. There are 2 types of grocery stores. One is 60 to 80,000 square feet, which would be good if we had the property, but you don't. So now they have a smaller grocery store. It's important to Washingtonville, to the Heights, to
Anybody
other
in
part
the
of Rhinebeck,
village.
to everybody in the village.
And it serves us. CVS serves us well with their 2 locations directly in the village. One
Right.
down on the Post Road and the one on the avenue now, moving down to the old AMP site. So they're doing a good job with what they have. They don't need that whole store. I don't think so anyway.
No,
but we need some supermarkets.
We need a grocery
down
store. And we
there,
used to
down
have
there, yeah.
so many. We had Shopwell on the avenue. There was A&P where CVS is on the Boston Post Road.
Yeah.
You were saying that there was something where Sedona used to be. Was
Where
that a
Sedona
grocery
used to be.
store?
Grand
I
Union.
worked there as a
We,
kid.
right,
So
we
did
had
I,
more
right.
grocery
Grand
stores
Union
than
was the
people.
Grand Union.
Grand Union.
Yeah.
Grand Union, and now we don't have a grocery store in
I
the
know.
village, and we need one. It is a necessity.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things, again, I'll go back to the central theme of it's not what they do, it's how they do it. One of my favorite things that I'm most proud of, I'd like to see what your viewpoints were. The village of Mamaroneck was precedent setting in New York State for prohibiting the sale of commercially bred cats and dogs. There's a distinct version of myself when I did it, and Trustee Potok, who voted against it because he was afraid that we were going to get sued. That's a hell of a way to be an elected official, that you don't care about what's good for the cats and dogs, the people that own them, and the village. So you vote against it. I don't care if I get sued. Sue me. Bring us to court.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, think what you saved. And the fact is, not only not gotten sued, but there's 5 other communities now followed our precedent setting.
They're following your leadership, Norman.
Exactly.
With the village of Mamaroneck.
Really
So-
was.
Village
Yeah,
of Mamaroneck.
yeah.
So-
Well, although I even think Mr. Finch had some reservations about that because he was kind of going off on a tangent, but it did. We want to save dogs. We want to save animals. Puppy mills need to be shut down.
Absolutely.
And that's a great way to stop it. But Mr. Potok just seems to be more of a czar. Not wanting to fill the police department. 2 positions were coming vacant, and he
Right.
did not want to fill those. I mean, there goes some of the safety of all our residents. We have a great police department. We have great fire department. We have great EMS. This village needs everything we have and probably more. I think we need maybe another code enforcement officer. Because a lot of people are complaining about the buildings that's going on. They're not being built like they were supposed to be
Correct.
built. And I'd like to see the R5 zone tweaked a bit, but not changed to an R6.
Absolutely
Absolutely
not.
not.
And especially the hottest thing out now is the residential parking, and you want to take cops away from it. The only way that program is going to be successful is to have policemen out there patrolling, whether it be the police in the car or the PEOs. It's unbelievable. But I want to touch on one thing, because this is one thing that's been bothering me since I've been on this board with these particular, and led by POTOC, and that is the volunteers and how you are petty politics. You pick only from your own little group and so on. I've had the unfortunate experience of seeing people on the zoning board, the planning board, your own BAR being kicked off. Why? Because, well, they're not part of the clique, the inner group. They don't and I tell you something, they may be running on a Democratic Party, but they don't represent the Democrats. And that's why Lou Santoro and myself won for 4 elections in a row, because we represent the people, and I think that's exactly what you do. You've made a very excellent statement and appearance before the board. I don't know if you want to talk about that, because it's exactly what it is.
Actually, before I go to that, maybe to your comment that they're running out of their own people, actually, I mean, I'm noticing that just driving around, I'm still looking for the Democrats' lawn signs. So far, I've only seen 2 in the whole village. So it's maybe a sign of things to come. Yeah, I know what happened that's actually why I'm more or less sitting here. That got me really interested in potentially, doing the Board of Trustee position going forward. When I was pretty much the chairman of I'm still the chairman of the BAR, at some point we were short, I think, because Dennis was for a short while leaving us.
Yes.
Going on an excursion up north, I think. But anyway, obviously we want to be operational, and again, we're all volunteers, so obviously happens once in a while that one person might not be able to attend. So I was asking for a replacement, and Mayor Rosenblum more or less appointed a very nice lady, Jennifer Cohn, more or less, to the board. So I mean, she was very excited, and so we were up and running. And then one day I saw, I think, an information that, I think I guess Board of Trustees was soliciting volunteers for various sports, including mine. And I wasn't even aware that there was an open position, because there are 5 people, and there were 5 people on the board. So obviously I got a little bit curious what's going on. So ultimately, I think they kicked her off, put someone else on who was on the board in the past, whom I know, and again, I have no problem working with him. But this whole process was, at least legally speaking, pretty questionable. In the end, I think more or less I decided not to pursue any legal actions. I could have filed an Article 78 because they were missing the deadlines already for their actions, so we could have reversed that whole thing. But the village has already enough litigation going on anyway. So I think I don't know to whom. I think I spoke to you. I think I think your comment was maybe the best way to resolve is just wait for the next election and pretty much make a change.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, we can go on for another 2 hours. We have 2 minutes left.
Wow.
So we'll start wrapping it up. But to that point, I would say for myself, I don't know, what you want to do is, if that referendum does get on the ballot, just vote no against it, because it's typical exactly what Mal just described. It's petty politics and a power thing. And as far as everything else is concerned, I could not be more proud than have the 3 of you on the board, because there is only one qualification to be mayor or trustee. Do what you think is best for the village of Mamaroneck. And unfortunately, that does not happen now in the village of Mamaroneck Board of Trustees. They're either Skyping and going someplace else, or they're just, playing on their telephones during the meeting.
They're too busy for the village.
Yeah.
Well, then the problem is doing the best thing for the village is you have to listen to people.
Exactly.
Listen to people, that's right.
Everyone's opinion counts.
Thank you very much. Remember, everyone vote on November 8th. And again, I couldn't be prouder than that. I really look forward to it. It's great.
I certainly hope we can get there to assist you, Norman, in all you do.
I'm
Because,
counting
you
on
have
it.
this village in your heart, and
Looking
so
forward
do we.
to it.
So do we.
Thank you.
Thanks.